Well, hey there, and welcome to the Menopause Health Podcast. Susan here, and I hope you're having an incredible day. If you are new to the show, I want to welcome you. We focus on bringing you the no-nonsense, actionable insight into perimenopause and menopause. So any woman 40 plus, or if you've had surgical menopause, this is your brand new home. And today we are going to cut through the noise about supplementation. We're going to talk about genetic testing and what it's like to navigate having an aging parent. And you're like, well, how does that all tie together? You are going to find out because my guest is absolutely amazing and we have an incredible conversation. Before I get into the show, the question I have is, are you using the Pause app? The Pause is available right now for early subscribers, and we call them founding members, and it will help you save time and money. And our AI agent Harmony, she will do everything from writing grocery lists to you for you, giving you workouts. She'll even help you. I've used her before, just kind of giving me a breathing exercise and helping me navigate any stress that comes up in my day. We also have other incredible features. We have fun challenges like our Dry 21, which really encourages you to abstain from alcohol. Not 30 days because life happens, business happens. I know it does for me, but at least 21 days of the month. And you're 30 and 30. So the CDC guidelines say move your body for 30 minutes a day. It could be shoveling snow. It could be going for a walk. It could be doing a yoga class. It doesn't have to be running and high intensity stuff all the time. And so we have fun things like that and so much more. There's a lot of things that are getting added to the app, and that's why we have it available for the very low price, the trial price of $3.99 in US for your first month, or locking it in for $29.99 for the year. And we are getting rave reviews, and literally we are just getting started. So go to the App Store, look for the Pause Menopause app and download it today and get started, because we would love your feedback. So my guest today has a Ph.D. that is focused on estrogen metabolism. She is an incredible founder. She has a virtual women's health clinic, which focuses on helping women in menopause. And she is a very sought after leader and speaker. And she's also a woman in her 50s who has navigated these waters before. And in the show, we're going to talk about everything from what's been going on with Black cohosh to should you get genetic testing, and how do you even know if your supplements are working for you or not, and what are the actionable things that you can do today to begin to feel better. So with that, let's get into this episode of the Menopause Health Podcast with my guest, Dr. Betty Murray.
Welcome to the Menopause Health Podcast, your go-to resource for practical advice brought to you by credentialed health professionals and industry experts. Here is your host, Susan Sly.
So Betty and I were having this discussion about aging parents. We were talking about supplementation. We were talking about estrogen detox. And I was like, oh girl, we need a show. Like, we have to actually hit recording because we're catching up as friends. We're going to jump into some personal stuff. So Betty and I were talking about navigating aging parents, women in our 50s, professional women, entrepreneurs. And Betty, you just, congratulations firstly, you just over the past holidays got your mom's house sold. Can you jump in and talk about this journey you've had with your own mom? Because most of the people listening have aging parents and they are going through very similar situations.
Yeah. No, I lost my dad like over a decade ago, and my mom, thankfully lived alone. So she had her own home. She was rocking and rolling, out living completely, on her own. And, even checking her own taxes. So we're talking sharp. And oddly enough, my husband had this leg injury, and On the day my husband's getting surgery for a crush injury on his leg, he's a firefighter paramedic for the city of Dallas. I get him home. He can't do anything. He can't stand up. My mom's best friend calls me and says, I can't get your mom on the phone. And lo and behold, I tell my husband, I'm like, prop yourself up against the wall. Don't know what's going on. Deal with it, right? I go over to her house. She's having a heart attack. We get her to the hospital. And while she's in the hospital, I talk to the cardiologist. He's like, she's likely going to throw a clot that's large enough that we aren't going to be able to do much about it, right? And so she did. So I sat in the ER and I watched her have a stroke. And, she went from 100% functional to 100% full assist. She has long-term memory, so she remembers people like myself, where she is in space and time, and where, all of that. She can't feed herself, can't transition, can't do anything. And I think, as women, we recognize, I think, sort of in a intellectual way that we're going to probably be responsible, but to have to take care of a parent wherever they are on that spectrum is a full-time job, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's not only the legal and the financial and all these other things that you have to take on, but it's the emotional toll of having to parent a parent, and also make decisions that are often really difficult as well, right? Because it is, we all are going to pass away at some point and end of life. And, I choose to look at it as, my mom made it to 88, going on 89, and living alone and having never spent a night in the hospital until that night. And so I'm like, well, rock on. That's what we really wanted. She didn't really want what she's experiencing right now. But it takes a toll. And I think a lot of women get into this position and they may have kids at home, or, kids that have graduated and they're in college, or they're empty nested, but they now have this new burden, right? And and you're often torn between wanting it to be over, in all honesty, and then also never wanting to lose that person too. And I think nobody really talks about that.
Yeah. And well, first and foremost, my heart goes out to you, having walked that similar path with my dad, as you know. And one of the things we bonded over early on, and he was, up until he was 83. I mean, he had a YouTube channel, for goodness sake, driving, everything. He was a horrible eater, and I could not convince him otherwise, despite, my background in holistic health. But, and like at some point I had to let go and be like, okay, you do you, if you want to eat the whole pie, no, it's not good for you. Okay. And to be able to do that, and then going through suddenly this responsibility of him first transitioning into assisted living, and then him passing and cleaning out his house and all of those different things, and standing up a business. And then there's our own health. And that's where I want to begin this journey with you on the show, because you are healthy. You live it, you walk it, you breathe it. And more than likely, as people are listening, if you don't have your health, as these transitions happen, it is a new kind of stress that when you already are under stress, that it's just this huge burden that feels so heavy. And so, Betty, you see women in perimenopause, in menopause, you've navigated it before. Let's jump in and I want to talk about the supplement myth, because there's, a lot of physicians are like, no supplements. And you know me, I do probably 30 to 40 supplements a day. I cycle them through, but I'm educated, trained, and certified from many years ago. Why is it supplements get such a bad rap, especially in the allopathic community?
There's several reasons. I would say first and foremost, we have to recognize that traditional allopathic conventional medicine lack nutrition training. Depending on the school, 20 to 30%, depending on the country, get any nutritional training at all. And I'm talking basic stuff like this is a protein, this is a carb, this is a fat, right? So the reality is they have no context, because they don't really have training in how to use nutrition therapeutically. And that includes nutritional supplementation. And then supplementation falls into a lot of categories. So supplements are essentially something that's not food, but also not prescriptive. So that could be things like vitamins, minerals, nutrients, phytochemicals, polyphenols that you get from fruits and vegetables, all the way to, synthetically derived things, and also herbs, right? And, the government in the United States passed DSHEA a long time ago. So it's not that they're completely unregulated. Like a lot of times they'll say, oh, they're completely unregulated. That's not true. DSHEA has requirements like generally recognized as safe, like as a food or an herb. It has to qualify for those things. And it requires the companies to self-police. So the reality is because the doctors are untrained and they don't have good understanding, and because there is some onus on the company to manage it, to some degree it's perceived as buyer beware. So the doctors just say, oh, they're all bad, you can't use them, they can't help you. Whereas the reality is a good, high quality, what I would call professional medical grade supplement used appropriately to supplement a good diet can definitely give you a leg up and help you with your unique nutritional needs to help your body operate better. But I think I do think it's important to work with somebody that knows what they're doing. Because there's a lot of genetic variability in how we metabolize things based on particularly the liver, and you can get herbs that interact with each other, you can get herbs that interact with medications, and you don't know what you don't know. And I think particularly just because it's in a supplement store or a Whole Foods or Sprouts, not to pick on those companies, doesn't mean it's perfect for you, right? Natural doesn't always mean safe. Belladonna is natural, but it's also not safe to take. Yeah. So I think there's two sides to that. I don't think we throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think it's also, important to, if you're especially using herbs, to work with somebody who really knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. And I think too, to that point too, let's talk about supplement quality, because when people think about this little pill they're taking or whatever it is, a tincture of some sort, that the sourcing for that, I'll use this example, Betty, it's just coming to my head. It's like building a house. Just because we just bought a new house and I'm about to orchestrate a renovation. So that's what's at the top of my mind. But if I'm looking at building materials, I can look at pretty, right? Or I can look at high quality. So can you talk about the quality of ingredients and how they vary? Because even the legislation, I know that there are some changes coming, but I'll just give an example and then I'll throw the football to you, girlfriend. With whey protein, the way it's legislated in the United States, it doesn't have to be 100% whey protein to call it whey protein. They could have some soy protein and pea protein and a whole host of other things thrown in there. Even some protein powders have ash in them as a filler, but they could still call it whey protein as long as it's above a certain percentage. And people don't realize, most people aren't educated, that the supplement they're buying could have those same issues. So can you talk about the quality of the sourcing?
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's very much up to the onus of the company, and again, we can have varying degrees of ingredient requirements for something to be labeled as such. And if we look at what, some of the attorney generals have shown is, Amazon has been caught for counterfeit, like products that look like the brand but not, or containing things that shouldn't even be in it. And then you can look at big chain stores that have also had, a attorney general go take stuff off the shelf, take it and test it and show that it didn't have the active ingredient at all or had other contaminants. So what that means is it's important to, number one, know the company that you're working with, sources the raw ingredients and test the raw ingredients before actual blending or creating of a product. And that they also check it for contaminants, things like mycotoxins and heavy metals and other toxins that could be in it. And that when they produce the actual lot and batch, that they test it again for efficacy and content, right? So when we, like my practitioners that work with my telemedicine team or in my clinic, we recommend professional grade, professional products that go through the same packaging requirements like a pharmaceutical, which means the batch, the raw material, everything gets tested, and you can actually look at those certifications online. If you're buying them over the counter from other places, they may or may not have anything that you think is in it, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, we've had enough instances where that has been into question, but your professional brands are definitely, and I'd say it's also, you get what you pay for. If you see a vast difference between one product's price and you see this like bargain basement product at your local store, there's a reason why it's a bargain basement, because these products cost to make, right? High quality ingredients, just like food, are high quality ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. I was smiling because I was thinking about my dad, because he was like a big box store supplement guy. I won't name the store. And he had all of these supplements that were tablets. And that, there's a vinegar test that you can, if it doesn't dissolve in vinegar, it's not dissolving in your body. And I'd be like, Daddy, none of these passed the vinegar test, but he was just so convinced. And this is where supplements in the allopathic community, and to your earlier point, I used to, years and years ago, I would teach nutrition at a college, and also many of my personal nutrition clients were physicians, that they just don't get the training, most of them, unless they go off and do like an integrative, write their integrative boards or do something else. And so what are some common things you can recommend, Betty, when people are looking for supplements? Because there are some different standards and things people can look for.
Yeah, there's definitely GMP, so that's good manufacturing production, right? So that means that they've gone through certifications. And then there's additional certifications different companies may go through. But GMP is the absolute kind of rock bottom, is what I would say. And like I said, I trust professional brands because, again, I matter of fact was at one of these professional brands walking through their production facility when the FDA came and visited, because they visit all the time, just like they would, Abbott or any of the other pharmaceutical companies. And it's comforting to know that there are those checks and balances that are really, really important, because, people can put things in capsules. It's not that hard, right? And so you want to make sure that you're getting something that's manufactured in the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people put drugs in capsules, right? They put a lot of things in capsules. Let me ask you this. There has been some controversy around black cohosh lately. And for years, on the holistic nutrition side, it was like a gold standard of things that were recommended to women going through perimenopause and menopause. And what has your research shown with black cohosh in particular? Are there any other ones you think are, maybe ones we used to think were good, but, now we're seeing something different?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of herbs that are all in this class. Black cohosh, red clover. There's several rhubarb plants that have similar sort of mechanisms. And then you can even look at the soy genisteins. And they're basically phytoestrogens. So they have this estrogenic-like approach. However, because they are herbs, they also process through the liver through a complex sort of, I like to think of it as wrappers. Our body detoxify or biotransforms by wrapping different wrappers around that ingredient to sort of get rid of it. And as it transforms it, it makes it into intermediate sort of ingredients. So think of it, I've wrapped a pink wrapper around this toxin that I'm going to throw in the trash. When it has the pink wrapper around it, it needs to take the next step to go, let's say, a black wrapper. Based on your genetics, right? So one person may be great at wrapping a pink wrapper, but not great at the black one. So that means that the ingredient, whether it's a black cohosh derivative or anything else for that matter, can get stuck in between those two steps, right? Same thing with drug metabolism. We know there's well over, a couple years ago it was about 185 drugs, so it's probably well over 200 now, that have known gene interaction that can be potentially deadly, right? Meaning that you process it differently than someone else. Well, herbs are the same way. The problem with nutritional herbs, again, if you're not working with somebody that's looking a little deeply and you're maybe using herbs to manage your perimenopause or menopause, if nobody's looking at how you process those, you could literally have something your body cannot process well, and it is toxic to the liver, right? Which is some of the concern with black cohosh and some of these other ingredients. It's not, in my estimation, so much that it's modulating estrogen and reducing hot flashes or whatever it is. It's how you uniquely, based on your genetics, process that ingredient, and can you process it properly? The other thing that I also see too is, none of these studies have really controlled for the brand, the dose. They're buying it off the shelf and they're like, it says it's, let's say, 150 milligrams. Do you know if it's 150? What if it's 1,000? You don't know, because they aren't testing it for that too. So I think there's so many things about the studies that we have to watch for. But I think the bigger thing is how you individually metabolize something and what your body's going to do with that particular thing. Because those same pathways are affected by your hormones and your environmental toxins.
Well, someone sent me, and I have a follow-up question. Someone sent me this email going, no, turmeric is so bad because, the liver can't process it. And I'm going, what about the, women in India who it's part of their diet every single day? It's like the soy study, me being half Asian. So for people who don't know, and I know you know, but the instances of breast cancer in Chinese women in particular were studied were so low. It wasn't until the North American diet was introduced and cow milk and gluten and all sorts of things that were not in that diet. But women were eating tofu sometimes every single day. And then the study comes out and it's like, oh, tofu is bad, tofu is bad. Well, you have to look at who funded the study. That's one. Number two, you need some common flippin' sense. Like you're not going to tell, women whose diet daily is tofu, where there's no breast cancer, that suddenly tofu is bad and you need to stop. And so when I was practicing as a nutritionist, I would always ask what their culture of origin was. So where was your mom born? Where was your dad born? Where were your grandparents born? And let's take a look. And I had another girlfriend on the show who's got a Ph.D. in nutrition, and we love the culture as a place to start. So people listening, where could, one is they could go get genetically tested for a whole host of things. What is something they could do today to look at and say, okay, how do I bring some common sense into this? Because there's so much competing information, and one day this is good for you, one day it's not. How do we sort through that?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, the family of origin, your ethnic background is really, really important. Again, turmeric is a commonplace dietary intake through all of basically India and half of Asia, right? Like it's every day. So, okay. The other thing is like Northern Europeans did a lot more dairy and wheat-based foods than Asia, right? So depending on your population, so one of the first things obviously is to look at your ancestry and understand that. Now, genetics give you the foundational assumption of what's being built. Like if you're building a house, that gives you the dimensions, how wide it is, how deep is it, maybe where the plumbing comes up. But it doesn't tell you what you put on top of it, which is your actual home. Is it a single-story ranch home, or is it a 3-story condo complex with a pool on top? That's your epigenetics. And I think that's by far more valuable. I love knowing the genetics because it informs where to look. But the epigenetics, how your body actually processes stuff, can actually be derived from urinary testing, mostly. You can get some from plasma, but the vast majority come from urinary testing. We can see byproducts of those chemical reactions in your urine to tell you, do you uniquely process this particular nutrient, whether it's, methylation, for example, the MTHFR and folate and folic acid. Which is the synthetic form, is we can see that actually in action to tell you what avenue you want to take. So if you want a precision experience, that's the best way to understand your unique things. But I think just getting informed by where your ancestors came from definitely helps you narrow it down, right? It definitely helps give understanding to, what foods your ancestors' genetics mutated to respond to its environments, right? Whatever our genes have done was to help our ancestors to survive the hardships they experienced, right? So somebody that grew up in the fertile, or their family came from the Fertile Crescent, or I like to say from the Philippines, for example. The people from the Philippines had food, lots of different foods, compared to my ancestors who were up in Ireland and Scotland and England with nothing half the year,
right?
Except for the rabbit they could chase down. So those things can heavily inform what your body was designed to consume.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you shared that, because so often there's this, everyone's looking for the magic bullet. Everyone's looking for the one size fits all. We're seeing that with the GLP-1s. We're seeing, there's always something. Back in the old days, it was like, whatever fen and all the different things. It's like suddenly, and we're seeing it even with HRT, with things like pellets, which are not FDA approved. We always say that on this show. We're not saying we're against pellets, but they're not FDA approved. So buyer beware. And the way I liken it, Betty, is when all of the fillers first sort of came online, and then suddenly Bob on the corner at Bob's clinic was doing fillers, right? And everyone started doing fillers. You'd go to your OBGYN, it's like, would you like some Botox with your pap smear today? Like, and now we're seeing that sort of same thing with hormones, where women are getting prescribed hormones, and not necessarily by people who are trained. The same thing is there are nutrition recommendations given out by people who are not trained, and they're not doing the genetic testing. The tests, do you have some tests that you recommend personally, or like within your practice that you like? So someone listening, is there somewhere you could point them?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I think, hormone replacement requires testing for efficacy, number one. So like testing, like our clinicians, we, at a minimum, check blood levels as we start titrating to make sure that they're actually at a therapeutic dose. Because just because you're not having hot flashes doesn't mean you're even close to therapeutic, or not too high either, right? So, but when you get past that sort of basic, am I therapeutic, then it becomes am I optimized? So if we're looking at hormones and hormone replacement, I think there's several versions out there. So urinary hormone metabolism testing, this is where I spent my entire dissertation. Mm-hmm. So how our body packages hormones and toxins and things that go into that estrogen pathway, and how it gets rid of it. There are companies like Precision Analytics, which does the Dutch test, HuMap, which is done by Doctors Data. There's also several companies that do 24-hour, which has been considered the gold standard, 24-hour urine hormone metabolism. It's just a little less convenient because that's going to show your genetics in action. I think those are vitally important. Like, that's part of our standard of care for our telemedicine company and also our clinic. And then, when we're looking nutritionally also, looking at organic acid testing, particularly we use one called the NutriEval or Metabolomics by Genova Labs. No financial commitments there. I get nothing out of it, but it's there are a couple other competitors. I just happen to think that they're the best. Those show your genes in action also. So if you're supplementing, how much, what kind, how much do I need in combination with these other ingredients? Do I actually need it or not? It helps narrow it down. There's a lot of things that we might need genetically that were unique, like B vitamins. There's high variability between individuals on how much they need. But there's also a lot of people taking stuff that's really not helpful, right? Or it might be good, but not necessarily necessary. So I think it's important to sort of understand that and work with somebody. And those we routinely do. All of our nutrition clients go through those tests. Stool testing, super important also.
Yeah, not fun, but it is important, especially microbiome. And we're seeing, so many, it's interesting because before we went into the show, Betty and I were talking about like all these different conferences, right? And we're seeing now a lot of femtech startups that are in this particular space of testing, whether it's, urine or the, swabbing and all the different stuff that's happening. And even, now skin biome in addition to vaginal biome, in addition to every single biome. And you could go, crazy with testing. And, for some people, that's not a financial opportunity at the moment, right? For whatever they're going through. So what advice would you give to someone listening to the show? Maybe they're listening for the very first time, Betty, and they're like, I'm not feeling good. I'm on a budget. What is something I could do right now that is common sense?
Common sense for a particular area, like energy, sleep, or
for like they're going through menopause, perimenopause, and they're having the top symptoms. Thank you for the clarifying question.
Yeah, because I was like, ooh, got a lot of stuff there. So I think people overlook the foundations, and nobody wants to hear this, right? Nobody wants to hear, like, everybody's like, Betty, what supplement can I take so I sleep like a magician and I lose 20 pounds and all those things. Believe me, if I had it, you would know because I'd be selling it. It just doesn't exist. So I think it's really important to understand that if you're going through perimenopause and menopause, your symptoms of that, like every woman goes through that. We don't get a pass. 100% will go through. The severity and the degree of symptoms are often driven by how metabolically healthy you are. Right. So if you are, eating right and getting plenty of protein and lots of fiber and fruits and vegetables in a wide variety of colors, that means you're getting the fiber that feeds your microbiome. You're getting the polyphenols from your fruits and vegetables that also feed them and also help some of those detoxification pathways. You get protein so you hold on to muscles and it keeps your blood sugar stable so you're not on the roller coaster every day. You get good sleep and you do stress management and drink plenty of good water, and you get exercise, particularly weight bearing exercise, to hold on to your muscle and your bone. If you're doing those foundations, like I don't like, because everybody visualizes a food pyramid, but again, it is like you have to have those. There's not a supplement on the planet that's going to get past that. Yeah. If you have those, guess what? Your symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are often going to be slightly better. And then at that point, then you can look into the more interesting things like, do I do bioidentical hormone replacement? Am I on that continuum where I need it? I would say my general stance from the literature and the science is most women should have that conversation and consider it as part of their treatment. But I would also recommend don't run to try and get a pill, a patch, an injection, and think that one thing is going to make you feel great if you haven't done the baseline. Believe me, I tried. I tried to biochemically make supplements to work. It does not work. It does not work. And I really get frustrated online as a nutritionist and somebody who's owned a clinic for 20 years, tens of thousands of women getting help for perimenopause and menopause. And nothing frustrates me more than to see products that are natural herbal products saying that it can make up for the loss of hormones, and you don't, that this will rebalance your hormones.
Yeah.
Like, it will not.
Absolutely. And that's what our focus is on, the pause. It's that front line before you see your practitioner. It's like, let's dial in all of the common sense things that work, which are not fun. That's why we are making it fun. But because we know there's an amelioration. And then we get to the customization, because here's the thing. If you are, just to be raw and real, like let's say someone is obese and they're a smoker and they're eating Fritos, yes, more than likely that is going to ameliorate your menopause symptoms, right? Which I know is not what anyone wants to hear, right? But you have a wonderful way of delivering what no one wants to hear with like being really amazing about it.
Thank you. I've been doing this for a long time.
I know you have.
And trying, and because nobody wants to do that. Believe me, I don't get up and go, gosh, I want to put on my weight vest today and go out while it's still dark out and, hoof it. I don't want to do that any more than anybody else. I'm not a morning person. But the reality is pay now, pay later, right? Like if I don't do the work now to stay healthy, I will end up, I walk into a nursing home every day, right? And I can look at it and say, my mom didn't end up there until 89, right? And that's awesome, right? Personally, she probably would have been better off had that been just the end, right? Yeah. But there are the nursing homes are all filled with women. And they're filled with women, and we have an average of 4.5 years compared to men where we live longer but less healthy. And so the onus is on us to take better care of ourselves, and that means while we're caregiving, right, we're still caring for ourselves at the same time, because we don't want a long lifespan with a poor health span. We want those to equal out, and we have to do the work. It's just the reality.
Well, Betty, thank you so much for that. And the visual of, if anyone has been in a case, you know what? Here's what I'm going to say. If you want some aversion therapy, it's very sad. Go to a care home. See the women who didn't do resistance training and they're all slumped over, sitting in a chair with no one there, and their head is down because they don't have the back strength. See the people who had terrible diet, whose, brain deteriorated, and there are genetic factors, but there are things you can do, as Betty said. See all the people who end up in that moment in accumulation of lifestyle choices. And I know I'm probably going to get some feedback on this episode. I mean, we talk about everything, menopause on the show, and and to Betty's point, and I've done that with my dad. And I think for anything, I like you, like I don't mind doing my cardio, but I don't feel like doing resistance training. But what I do, Betty, is I think about, there was this one woman in the care home for my my in-laws, and she would just sit there in the chair. They'd roll her out to the lobby in the morning, and she was there all day, you know, in a diaper, slumped over, could not lift her head. And I'm like, I am not going to be that woman. Like, no freaking way.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. Like the stats with osteoporosis, right? So these are, you know, post Women's Health Initiative, which is why we see such a... So 50% of women right now, based on these stats, if we don't do hormone replacement, will end up with an osteoporotic break in our lifetime. If you're over 65, 50% of those will never regain the level of mobility they had before that, right? You do not want to fall and break something and end up in a wheelchair the rest of your life. Right, but that's what the stats show. Like I'm a scientist first and foremost, and I have to look at the data. And the data is we have to preserve it rather than try and recover it. There are not drugs out there strong enough because like the osteoporosis example, the osteoporosis drugs do not build high quality bone. They look better on a DEXA, so all the doctors high five each other, but they're still fragile. Right, so we have to preserve it, which means that we have to put some time and attention to self-care now. And keep it as part of it, you know? Because it doesn't matter how wealthy you get. If you don't have your health, you've got nothing. Warren Buffett, if he was bedridden, would be like, I don't care how much I have. I would rather be able to get up, right? And so we just have to think about it that way. And there's a feeling that we get as women, like I'll take care of everybody else, and eventually I'll have a moment to myself and take care of me, or I'm going to martyr myself, and I'm going to go ahead and attach myself. No offense, I'm just going to do the visual for everybody. Attach myself to the cross because I'm doing it for everybody else, but you won't be there to be able to do it for everybody else. Like if I wasn't taking care of myself, I wouldn't have been able to continue to take care of my husband and my mother at the same time.
Yeah, and to your point, there are a lot of, Betty and I will take this show on the road. It'll be called, you know, Betty and Susan's Tough Love Roadshow. There are a lot of girlfriends, and I know you have them too, in their 50s who are alone. And it's like, what are you doing to build resilience? Because if you don't end up in a relationship and you fall one day or, you know, are widowed or whatever, like who takes care of you, boo? At the end of the day, I laugh, like the panic button. I'm like, are you going to remember, Betty, as you're falling down to press the panic button? That's why like artificial intelligence, like computer vision monitoring makes sense. But you've got to build your resilience. You've got to do that. And, you know, so I want to say shouts out and kudos to you, girlfriend, for all of the lives you're changing, what you're building. It's just amazing. Follow Betty on social media. We'll put links to all of her social media in the show notes. And Betty, I want to give you the opportunity to speak to the woman who is like, I've never taken a supplement. I don't do weight training. I am like, self-care seems so selfish. Like, finish us off.
Yeah, you know, it's not selfish, right? You can't be there for the people you love and take care of the people you love if you are not well, right? And you don't, because you don't want to also be a burden on your family member, right? That's the other thing is I don't have children, right? So I'm in that position where if I happen to be the last one standing, I don't know who's, you know, it's like, who am I going to pay to take care of me, right? At the end of the day. But there's no guarantee your kids will too. But the reality is you don't want to be a burden on your family. So all you got to do is one thing, right? You just have to be slightly better today from a health standpoint than you were before. So if you've never worked out, get up and go walk down the street. Right? Like start somewhere because each behavior feeds on each other. You don't have to become super fitness queen overnight. You just have to take positive steps towards it. Right?
Amazing. That's
the real important part.
Yeah. If you're the last one standing and you look over your shoulder and no one's there, you're really the last one standing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, okay. Yeah. You know, but you gotta. Because that's the other thing, like, as somebody without kids, people go, well, no one's going to take care of you. I'm like, there's no guarantee they will anyway, you know? You don't make the assumption that they would, right? So the reality is you want to hold on to your health as long as possible and get it every day.
So well said. Well, Betty, thank you so much for being on the show. And again, you're absolutely amazing. And everyone listening, if the show has been helpful, Betty and I would love a 5-star review. Share it. Tag us on social. We would absolutely love that. I read all the comments. And Betty, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
All right, everyone. Well, this is another episode of the Menopause Health Podcast, and I will see you in the next episode.
This Menopause Health Podcast is brought to you by the Pause Technologies. To find out more, visit thepause.ai and follow us on your favorite social media channels. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share the show, and connect with us. We will see you in the next episode.